Thank you all so much for joining us and to discuss the 7 steps to social media success. Jazz and I will be your host today, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jazz to introduce herself first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jazz, social and content manager at Slate. I've been working in social for around 5+ years now. So I actually started in-house, and then during COVID, managed to grow my own TikTok account, which enabled me to make the jump into freelance life. Since then, I've worked across paid social strategy and campaign activations with brands like Uber Eats, Adobe, and TikTok themselves. I have been working with Slate since February last year on a freelance basis, but I loved what Slate does so much and how it supports social media managers and brands that I decided to join them full-time in January.
Perfect. And I am Becca. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Slate. Similar to Jazz, I've spent my career in social media, first on the agency side, working across a few different industries and verticals. Ended that stint of my career working on McDonald's North America with, as you can imagine, bigger budgets than I've ever seen, which was very exciting, but also time consuming. So I'd made the jump back to the tech side, worked at Sprout Social as a customer success manager, and then made the jump to Slate a little over a year ago. So passionate about social, wanted to really establish my career in that space, and really excited to remain in this industry, and especially excited to talk to you all about some social media lessons we've learned along the way. Before we get started, just want to walk through a few housekeeping items, like any good webinar has. Quick call out, Bailey introduced herself in the chat. She is going to be manning the chat throughout our session. So if you have questions, please throw them in there so you don't forget them. If we don't answer them in real time, we will have time at the end where we'll address any question. And please just remember to keep your mics muted, just so that everyone can continue to hear the session. I will do my best to make sure my dogs aren't barking. But of course, when we get to the Q&A, if you want to unmute and ask your questions live, we welcome that as well.
So our goal for today is to essentially walk away with an understanding of how to be successful on social media. So to do that, we're going to be looking at a few key things. So we're going to be looking at audits and analytics, goal setting and channel strategies, and building your brand playbook to ultimately gain internal buy-in. So first up, social audit. So with the rate that social media changes these days, doing an annual social audit is possibly one of the best ways you can analyze your performance in order to build or update your social strategy. There's a few questions that you'll be asking yourself when conducting a social audit. One of them being, is each profile on brand, both visually and in terms of messaging? So we're going to do a quick, easy game. If people can utilize the chat, if they can tell me what brand is featured in this TikTok video. And you should all know this. Yes, it is Duolingo. So yes, you all guessed it, Duolingo is correct. So having a strong brand presence when you're managing multiple different platforms and creating different types of content can be difficult. These days, social teams face even more complexities when it's becoming more popular to create brand personalities on TikTok and be pretty vocal and controversial on Twitter. So there's a few things that you can do to make sure that your profile is on brand. So making sure your brand is prominent across your content, so you're always using your brand colors, fonts, and watermarking any content. Think about how you're communicating online. Is it consistent across all platforms, or do you have to alter your messaging and brand voice on different platforms? And if you do, are you able to justify why? And the last one, to tie that all together, is that Your profile should be recognizable without people knowing that it's you. So what we mean by that is if someone goes over to your Instagram and they can't see your logo, they can't see your handle, but they're scrolling through your content, they should be able to recognize that it's your brand. Likewise on TikTok, likewise on Twitter.
Exactly. So it's really already throwing in a buzzword, that red thread, right? So it's that brand recognition without seeing your handle. And as Jazz said, it can be colors, it could be fonts, it can be your logo in a jersey, on packaging. There's so many ways to accomplish that depending on your brand, but having that red thread, having that consistency is so important. Cool. You also, of course, need to identify what content is performing best for you based on a few different perspectives. So we need to look at by channel and network, right? Your content that you're producing on those channels and the content that's resonating with your audience may not be the same across, let's say, an Instagram or a TikTok or a Facebook. It's also important to look at by pillar, right? So if you are trying to drive education in one pillar and drive entertainment in another, entertainment might be working a little bit harder for you in video views, for example, but education is still equally as important for your company. So having those benchmarks by pillar can really help you evaluate that success. It's also important to look at by format. So having one evaluator or one metric that you're going to base your performance on is not recommended, right? So for videos, you might be measuring those by video views. For sales driven posting formats, you might be looking at clicks to website. So having that format established can also help you really understand what content is performing hardest for you based on that goal. It's so important to not just pull in raw data. We cannot say this enough. When looking at your analytics, it's so important to track them back to your goals. I've been in so many different positions where, my clients wanted all of the data. They wanted to see everything. But when it's not tied back to your goals, it's so easy to get distracted by something that's not important. By looking at those goals through the proper lens, you can take a look at, right, like across channels, content pillars, format, like we just said, and really start to understand what's working hardest for you and what's moving you towards your social goals and your business objectives.
So to recap, to tie that all together, the 3 questions that you should be asking yourself is each profile on brand, both visually and in terms of messaging? What content is performing best? And how should you interpret those analytics? So we all know that essentially there is always a business purpose to being on social media, whether it's to drive sales, drive website traffic, increase engagement, or drive brand awareness. Concluding an audit with answering these 3 questions and whether you're meeting your overall purpose on social will give you a better understanding of what's working and what you need to do in order to be successful on social media. So now that we understand how we've been doing, the next thing that we need to do is we need to understand how we stand amongst our competitors. And the first thing that you need to do is to find them. Now, there's a few different ways that you can go about this. Some people will just pick a handful of competitors and analyze them. But what we would suggest doing is taking a slightly different approach than just finding any competitors. So imagine you are a medium-sized fashion fitness apparel brand. What we would suggest that you do is the first competitor you pick is a direct competitor. So this is someone who you feel like is on par with you. And in this case, we've picked Gymshark. The second one would be someone who is a leader in your industry, a brand that you think is the biggest and the best in your industry. So this one being Under Armour. And the third one would be a brand that you aspire to be like. So this doesn't have to be a brand in your industry. This can be a brand where you really like their tone of voice, you really like their content or the campaigns that they have, and they're a brand that you aspire to be like in terms of presence. So by selecting a diverse range of brands to analyze, it will help you understand how you benchmark against them in a few different ways and what you need to do in order to reach your inspirational brand. So there's a few key points that you need to consider when you're performing a competitive analysis. The first one would be profile presence. So where are they currently present on, and are they active on all of their platforms? Because we know that there's some brands that will just save their handle on a platform, but they're not actually active on there yet. And if you know that, then you're already one level up on them. 2, what is their brand voice? Is it consistent on all platforms, or do they adapt to suit their audience on each one? So for example, if you went to Duolingo's TikTok, you know, they're quite funny, they can be quite cheeky. Whereas on their Twitter, they're more customer service focused. Their brand voice is completely different. So analyze and have a look at how if your competitors alter their brand voice. How often do they post, and are they really active and maximizing their presence? And then also questioning whether their content is actually performing. So you can actually have a look at brands. There's a few tools that you can use to work out some basic engagement metrics, but have a look and see if they're really maximizing their presence on there. And then the 4th one is content pillars and format. By scrolling through their content, you'll be able to understand their content pillars and their customer pain points by going through all of their content, as well as the typical formats that they tend to use and what tends to perform well for them. And the final one is audience and partner engagement. So how do they tend to try and engage with their online audience? Is it via comments? Is it on story stickers? And are they leveraging any sponsorships or partnerships they have to engage with new audiences? So we already saw this year that Instagram, or was it back in the last year, Instagram brought out the collaborator feature, where you can invite a collaborator onto your post, and if that person accepts, that post will then be shared onto their grid and their audience will also see it. So it's a way to leverage other audiences. So the 3rd one is setting goals.
Right. So now we have an understanding on how we've been doing. We know how our competitors are doing. So we have that foundation. And now it's time to set some goals. So the first point here is going to be to assess whether your platform objective is still the same as what it was previously set to. So if your current strategy on Instagram is to drive website traffic through your stories, would that still be the goal? Or has platform or user behavior changed in a way which will make you change your goal? So we've talked about a few different things, and I'm just going to reiterate here, taking a look at what your business objective is. As Jazz said, right, our social presence always has that to ladder up to that business objective. How do our channel approaches differ, or how do the channels themselves differ? What are the strengths and weaknesses of each in relation to my business objective? And that's something we haven't really touched on, but is so important, are what changes have happened on the social networks themselves this year? And does that impact for performance or my previously stated objective? So it's really important to remember the environment that you're working within, and maybe some things that are beyond your control, but should still be factored in. Once you've decided on your overall platform performance or purpose, you can then start to build out a channel strategy. So we've mentioned this, again, we'll reiterate. It is nine times out of 10, you're going to want to differentiate your approach based on the different networks that you have chosen to show up on. When you're building out your channel strategy for each platform, you can leverage historical data, think about the KPIs and metrics that you want to track, and putting this down on paper is certainly an extra step, but it does hold you to those goals, and it does hold you to those objectives and those platform purposes that you've set forth when you think about establishing your path forward.
So the 4th step is industry trends. So these days, it is rare to survive a day without some form of social platform update or industry trend. And staying on top of these can be vital to the success of your overall strategy, as well as the day-to-day content that you create. So my fave brand at the moment, Duolingo. So we've seen firsthand the impact it can have with brands like Duolingo and just how valuable it can be to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to taking advantage of industry trends. So Duolingo grew from 100,000 followers to 1.9 million in a matter of months in 2021. They understood that in order to be successful on the platform, entertaining content had to come first, and their brand or business messaging had to come second in order for them to appeal to the masses and go viral. They used a brand mascot and had staff engagement on their contents to help humanize the brand, and they implemented TikTok's Flickr, Flash, and Flare content strategy. So what is that? So Flickr content is reactive content, quick and trending content. So this is the stuff that you'll see on a regular basis on the TikTok For You page, which are trends that everyone can find relatable. You've then got flash content. So flash content is everyday regular content that would typically be in your content calendar, or it would be made from your content pillars that serve your overall business objective. And then you've got flare content. So this is campaign style content. So it's not as often, but when it is executed, it is done on a large scale. So what can you do to stay on top of industry trends? So something that we do here at Slate is we have our own agile content team. And that is where we discuss social updates and trends in our weekly meeting. So what we do is we encourage everyone to bring one update, news article or blog post or social trend to share, and we discuss how this might impact us or our customers and what we can do to then get involved.
This is something that our customers do as well, like the New York Giants. Emma talked about this strategy in our last webinar where we discussed TikTok approach. Really important to just stay on top of those trends as they can come and go extremely quickly.
And the fifth step is building your brand playbook. So running through your social media audit on your own content as well as competitors and understanding your goals will help you build a brand playbook. The idea behind a playbook is that it soundly explains your goals on social media, your brand voice, look, feel, and your channel strategy. It's basically a how-to so that anyone can run your social media content. So what are the 6 components that make up a brand playbook? So 1, we've got style guide. So we now live in a day where there isn't a one size fits all for social media content. There's different dimensions, there's different formats, there's different lengths of video. So having an in-depth style guide of what content should look like on different platforms is key. Number 2 is tone of voice. So how should you be communicating online? What language should you be using? And are you adapting this on different platforms? And again, if you are adapting it, can you justify why? Content pillars is 3rd. So what are the key pillars that feed into your overall business goal? Where in terms of what content can we create, but having content pillars in place further implement and cement what you're creating that serves your business goal. A channel strategy. So Becca touched on this just, but a channel strategy will sit directly underneath your overall social media strategy. As mentioned previously, you may have different objectives for each platform you choose to be on, and having an individual strategy with your goal will help support that. So a competitive landscape will be in a brand playbook too. So having a true understanding of where you sit amongst your competitors will help you realize what makes you different and where you fit in within that market. And finally, something that we all love in social is setting goals. So being present on social media is a valuable asset to a business. We know that, and every brand will have goals. There is always a business purpose, as we've just said throughout this presentation. There is always a business purpose to being on social media, and setting your goals can clearly articulate the value that you, as a social media manager or as a social team, can add.
So we've done so much foundational groundwork. We know who we are, where we stand amongst our competitors, what our goals are, our approach to the different channels. We've got our playbook, and that helps us plan for the planned and, most importantly, unplanned. And that seems like a paradox, but it's not. Once you have your brand playbook, social media strategy foundation in place, you are ready to plan for that content, right? You've built a foundation that allows you to be able to plan for the unplanned. You understand what works well for you and what doesn't. You know what your brand voice is. You know the goals for your social content. And this understanding is going to enable you to quickly evaluate a timely trending piece of content and determine if it's worth a shot for you and your brand. And more importantly, you know which ones to immediately pass on and dedicate your time and resources to other avenues.
And then the seventh and final one is getting buy-in from stakeholders. So to tie all this together, we know that one of the hardest struggles that social teams experience is gaining genuine internal buy-in for the valuable work that they do, and having stakeholders understand the impact their work has on the brand and company. And by not having buy-in, it can dramatically limit the performance, creativity, and potential for your brand's social media success. So that's why at Slate, we think that for brands to be successful, their social media teams need to have the confidence to understand what value they add to the business and the autonomy to be able to make quick decisions that support the overall success of the brand on social. And to recap, these are the 7 steps to social media success. Any questions? Feel free to either put them in the chat or you can unmute your mics and just ask us.
I'll pop in with a question while maybe people are sending them in chat. So I feel like every day there's new trends, potentially every hour there's a new trend. So how do you guys suggest that brands look at trends and identify which ones would work for their channels?
Yeah, I think half the battle is finding the trends, right? So either subscribing to newsletters, finding sites that are going to unearth those trends for you. I know like Emma and team, I mentioned previously with the Giants, they all look at like their For You pages because the algorithms are all different and they bring some of those trends forth. This is going to age me so much, but I did social practicing before TikTok. So we would look at like trending topics on Twitter, things like that. And then, you know, as we mentioned, once you find those trends, knowing your brand, knowing your stance, knowing your approach, having that alignment, like Jazz just said, internally allows you to move quickly on those trends.
To add a different approach to that is that with trends, so for example, like TikTok trends, I can guarantee you that half the trends that Duolingo take part in, there was someone said, should we really be doing this? Like, does this fit with our brand? Does it fit with our messaging? Are we trying to reach the right people? But they've actually had success from like being a bit risky and actually appealing to the masses. You know, before they went viral on TikTok, I didn't know who Duolingo were. And I'm sure many people didn't know, but that's the key with seeing a trend and thinking, you know, is there a way that we can apply this in order to raise brand awareness, in order to reach the masses? So yeah, that's just a counter opinion there. Sometimes you might think, I don't think this is for us, but really have a think creatively and think about what could we potentially do to take part in this trend, but it also fits in with our brand. So it does take a bit of brain power. I'll be sitting there watching a video and the audio will be on loop on TikTok because I'll be thinking, there's got to be a way that I can make this relatable to Slate. There's got to be a way that I can make this relatable to being in social media or working in social media. So it just takes a bit more thought.
Nick, how have you not heard of Duolingo? I feel like I was one of those students. I took foreign language growing up, and I definitely studied to pass the test versus learn. So I have had to like jump back into Duolingo and like try then brush up on my Spanish. I have not been successful, but great brand, great app.
I don't know. It totally missed me. I've never heard of Duolingo until I mean, granted, I'm probably the oldest person on this call, so that's par for the course. But I've never heard of it. Today, I'm not trying to learn a foreign language. I saw a lot of when I followed them, I saw a lot of my friends were following them. Like they said, oh yeah, that helps my kids, stuff like that. But like I've never heard of Duolingo until today. So I'm 38, so I'll be that guy.
Fair enough. If you're not trying to learn a different language, I mean, that makes sense.
All you guys are bilingual. That's impressive.
Trying is the key word for me, but we've got a few bilingual team members. I'm sure some other people on the call. Any other questions? Great. Well, we are happy to give you all some time back. Thank you so much for joining us today and accommodating our schedule change. Really appreciate your flexibility as we worked to put our team first. You know where to find us on social. Please follow up with questions if you have them. Again, just cannot thank you enough for joining us today, and really hope that you all can take away a lesson learned from today's session. Take care, everyone.